Pay attention to what's about to happen now. In the early hours of May 30th, you're seeing what a Ukrainian drone operator sees. Thermal camera, black and white. And down there, Russian soldiers sleeping 100 kilometers from the front line, far from any trench, deep inside the occupied territory. They thought they were safe there, but they weren't. These men are from the 64th Brigade. That name means nothing by itself, but the name of a small town near Kyiv says it all. Bucha. At the beginning of the invasion in 2022, the Russians occupied Bucha. And when they retreated, the world saw the horror they had left behind. Civilians executed with their hands tied, mass graves. And the brigade identified as responsible for these crimes was exactly this one. Putin, instead of punishing them, decorated them for heroism. 4 years later, it was this brigade that Ukraine's drones found sleeping. And they attacked 21 times in a single night, without a single Ukrainian soldier setting foot on the ground. Revenge had been taken. But that's the least important part of this story, because no one is asking the question, how did Ukraine manage to find these men? How does a drone reach the exact spot, on the exact night, 100 kilometers inside? And the answer to these questions changed the entire war. Because what they used wasn't a weapon, it was something unexpected that, until recently, was used to update Google Maps. The attack you just saw wasn't a stroke of luck. It wasn't a special operation planned for months. It was routine. Just another night of work for a force that has just presented numbers that no army in modern history has ever released. On June 4th, the commander of Ukraine's drone forces, Robert Brovdy, published the annual operations report. According to the Ukrainian count, recorded mission by mission in a digital system called Delta, which stores video and evidence of each attack, this force alone put out of action 100,082 Russian soldiers in 358 days. So you can understand the scale of this. When Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022, he dedicated about 190,000 men to the operation. He thought that would be enough to take over the entire country in 3 days, because a single Ukrainian force in 1 year eliminated more than half that number. But there's a detail in this data that's even more disturbing than the total. Of the 100,000, 53,000 died. 46,000 were injured. More dead than injured, that may sound like just a statistic. It's not. In every war of the 20th century, the opposite happened. In World War II, there were about 3 wounded for everyone killed. In Vietnam, more than 3. In Afghanistan, almost 10 wounded for every death. On today's Russian front, the numbers have reversed. And the most likely explanation for this is frightening. Those who attack are not just spreading shrapnel at random. They're choosing where to hit. It's true that these numbers come from both sides of the war, and on this channel, we always label the source. But the trend has independent confirmation. Media Zona, a Russian investigative journalism group that counts the dead using obituaries and funeral notices, has confirmed by name more than 156,000 Russian soldiers killed since the beginning of the invasion. And it points to 2025 as the bloodiest year of the entire war, with 40% more obituaries published than the previous year. And then the question becomes inevitable. Why? Because the force responsible for these 100,000 makes up only 2% of the Ukrainian army. How can 2% of the army account for a third of everything Ukraine destroys in this war? And the answer that seems obvious is drones. Yes, Ukraine has drones, lots of them. But that answer explains nothing. Because Russia has them too. Both countries produce millions of drones per year. Today, drones cause about 80% of the casualties, on both sides. Russia took this so seriously that it created an entire center dedicated to drone warfare. the Rubicon, with the mission of catching up to Ukraine in technology and doctrine. Same weapon, on both sides, in similar quantities, and even so, only one side turned that weapon into a machine for causing 100,000 casualties. When two armies have the same tool and opposite results, the explanation isn't in the tool. It's in what you do with it, and what Ukraine did is what we're going to break down now. And if you like to understand war at this level instead of just repeating headlines, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because that's exactly what we do here. The Ukrainian transformation happened in 3 steps, and each one tightened the siege a little more. The first step was organization. In June 2025, Ukraine took its drone units, which already existed but operated independently, and tied everything into a single group under the command of Brigade. 12 units became a single machine. Each mission started being recorded and verified in the Delta. In other words, no more padded numbers shouted out. Each destroyed target has an archived image. Do you know what happens when this machine runs? 5,000 missions per day, 1,600,000, and 50,000 combat missions in a year, and a list of destroyed equipment that looks like the inventory of an entire army. 817 tanks, 1,379 armored vehicles, 4,890 artillery systems. Pay attention to this last number. Artillery is the bodyguard of the infantry. It's what clears the way for the soldier to advance. Without artillery, the infantry advances alone. And infantry that advances alone in this war dies. But organization alone doesn't explain what you saw at the beginning of this video. Organized drones still need one thing, to reach the target. And that's when the second shout came, movement, which redrew the map of war. For years, there was what the military calls a kill zone in Ukraine, the death zone. A strip about 15 or 20 kilometers beyond the front line where anything that moves can be destroyed by a drone. It was brutal, but it was narrow. Whoever crossed quickly would survive. Now a new generation of drones. Of medium range, it stretched that range to about 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers. In Luhansk, occupied since the beginning of the war. The Ukrainian 3rd Army Corps claims that their drones now control the skies, with attacks reaching more than 200 kilometers deep. Ukrainian military intelligence announced fire control over the corridor that connects Donetsk to Crimea, and the R-280 highway, Russia's main supply artery to the south, has become what the press is already calling the Highway of Death, closed to civilian traffic since the end of May. The effect reached far. In Sevastopol, Crimea, the occupation authorities limited fuel to 20 liters per person. And that's just logistics vehicles. Food, ammunition, and fuel trucks, 26,430, were destroyed in a year. And here we reach a point that few people understand about war. It's not won in the shootout, it's won by the truck. A front without supplies rots. The attack on the Bucha Brigade, which opened this video, happened exactly in that area, 100 kilometers in, where Russia thought it could rest easy. Now focus on a problem. To kill at 100 kilometers, you need to see at 100 kilometers. And quickly. Because the target moves. A drone hunting blind is a waste of battery. Ukraine needed eyes, and that's where the piece I promised at the beginning comes in. The Google Maps piece. And for you to understand how it works, let me tell you about a real operation revealed by the Wall Street Journal. The Russians hid an ammunition depot inside an old grain silo. To any drone flying overhead, it just looked like a silo. But on the Ukrainian soldiers' phones, satellite images were coming in. And it was enough to compare the new photo with an old photo of the same place for everything to show up. Structures that didn't exist before, and fresh tire tracks from military trucks. Confirmed, the drone takes off. And what you're seeing now is a Russian ammunition depot ceasing to exist. These images come from commercial satellites. Private. The main company is Vantor from the state of Colorado, operating with partners from the United States, the Netherlands, and Ukraine itself. And here's the part that sounds like fiction. These are the same satellites that updated Google Maps and monitored illegal fishing. This network is always taking pictures, 7 million square kilometers per day, and it passes over the same spot up to 15 times a day. Before, an image like this, it would go for analysis at a headquarters in Kyiv and take hours, sometimes days, and by the time the information reached the front, the target was already gone. Now the photo lands on the soldier's phone in 15 minutes. The time between finding and destroying a target has dropped by 90%. According to the Wall Street Journal, it's the first known time in history that commercial satellite imagery goes directly to the soldier to guide combat decisions in real time. Think about what this means in practice. Each small Ukrainian team became two things at the same time: an eye in space and a hammer in the air. The drone is just the hammer. The one who tells where to strike is the satellite. And now you must be wondering if this is commercial, if it's for sale. Why doesn't Russia just buy it too? She tried everything and every door was slammed in her face. Buying Western satellite imagery isn't possible because of the sanctions. No Western company sells to Russia. And what about improvising with Starlink? The Russians were using community terminals. They were smuggled in to communicate and to extend the range of their own drones until in February 2026, the blocking of these terminals became systematic. According to the Institute for the Study of War, one of the most respected analysis centers in the West, this immediately crippled Russia's ability to attack in depth. Russia then relied on fiber optic drones, which are immune to blocking. But the country's only fiber optic factory in the city of Saransk has been shut down since Ukrainian drones hit it in May 2025. 4 million kilometers of fiber a year, gone. Russia became dependent on China even for the cables. And the most ironic blow came from the Kremlin itself, by strangling Telegram. Inside the army, out of fear of uncontrolled information, they broke the informal communication that the Russian units themselves used to coordinate on the front lines. Do you see the pattern? But Ukraine's advantage isn't a technology that can be stolen or copied. It's the ecosystem. Private satellites, allied companies, programs, data flowing in minutes. And you can't buy an ecosystem in the middle of a war. Rubicon, that Russian drone warfare center I mentioned earlier, is trying to catch up. But it's chasing something that moves faster than it does. And the result of all this is already drawn on the map. April 2026. For the first time since August 2024, Russia had a net loss of territory. It retreated more than it advanced. The pace of the Russian advance dropped from almost 10 square kilometers per day last year to less than 3 this year. The institute itself honestly points out that part of the drop in April may be seasonal. The spring mud stalls any offensive, but the trend has been declining month after month since November. And it's not just analysts saying this. Anton Gerashchenko, an advisor to the Ukrainian government, summed up the situation like this. The Russian advance has practically stopped along most of the front line. Only a handful of sectors are still showing gains. And Russian casualties just keep increasing, pushed, according to him, exactly because of the technological advantage. Any Russian advance, any so-called advance that the Kremlin promised, was contained.
Ото лопата, ото дрон, а от там багато арти. І псам сьогодні дуже не переливки. Кажи.
Meanwhile, deep strikes have become routine, with the Corvette Boyki burning in the dry dock of St. Petersburg. The victory parade in Moscow without a single armored vehicle on the streets. You've already seen these scenes, now you know the system behind them. And, according to the same institute, Putin is currently operating with a false image of the front itself. fueled by the inflated reports delivered by his high command. The man commanding the war understands the least about what's happening in it. But the most important number in all of this assessment hasn't been mentioned yet, and it's a simple calculation. According to Brigade, Ukrainian drones are already eliminating between 33 and 35,000 Russian soldiers per month. And do you know how many soldiers the Kremlin is able to recruit per month? Between 33 and 35,000. In other words, Russia is now losing soldiers at the same rate it is able to replace them. Do you realize what that means? Every new man who joins the Russian army is just replacing someone who left. The army has stopped growing, and an army that doesn't grow can't sustain an offensive. It just bleeds in place. If these numbers hold, and that's the stated bet of the Ukrainian command, the war is no longer a contest of political will, it's become an equation. And today, that equation works against Russia. That's why revenge against the Bucha Brigade is the least important part of this story. What you saw on that thermal camera wasn't an attack, it was the system working. The satellite found the intel, it was passed down within minutes, and the drone carried it out. Ukraine didn't win a drone race, it solved an equation, and what solved it wasn't a weapon, it was the speed of information. And this applies to a lot. Beyond this war, for the first time, it's been proven on the battlefield that mass doesn't beat information. What smaller country can stop the offensive of a nuclear power if it can see faster than it? What was the biggest proof that the world got the message? The United States Special Operations Command is already integrating the same type of system for its own soldiers, the most powerful army on the planet, copying Ukraine. The student has become the teacher, and this story is just beginning. Brigade's force promises to double the number in the second year, 200,000 casualties. The Russians, well, have a tough job ahead of them. This equation will be tested in the coming months, and every move will be covered here on the channel. So, go ahead and subscribe to follow everything with us, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Russia can still break this equation? Or have the tables already turned for good? See you in the next video.